Oklahoma hides a deeper past beneath its open plains and quiet hills. Long before written history, ancient peoples carved symbols into stone, raised ceremonial mounds, shaped copper into sacred forms, and marked the land with structures whose purposes still aren't fully understood. These mysteries don't shout for attention. They wait, scattered across the landscape, asking only that we slow down and notice what remains. Robbers Cave Petroglyphs. Robbers Cave sits tucked into the rugged folds of the Wichita Mountains in southeastern Oklahoma, a place where the land feels older than the map that names it. The cliffs rise sharply from the forest floor, layered sandstone streaked with iron stains, broken ledges, and narrow overhangs that feel deliberately hidden. Long before the park signage, long before outlaws gave the cave its modern name, people were coming here for reasons that still aren't fully understood, and carved quietly into the stone walls, often overlooked by hikers rushing past, are petroglyphs that suggest this place mattered far more deeply than its reputation as a bandit hideout. The first thing that strikes you when you see the carvings is how restrained they are. These aren't bold, dramatic images meant to dominate the rock face. Many are shallow, worn, almost shy. Lines intersect, curves repeat, symbols appear partially finished or intentionally abstract. You have to slow down, let your eyes adjust to the texture of the stone, before they even reveal themselves. That subtlety alone raises questions. These weren't meant to impress strangers. They were meant to be understood by those who already knew what they were looking at. The petroglyphs are scattered across sheltered rock walls and overhangs, rather than deep inside the cave itself. That placement matters. They sit where light reaches at certain times of day, where sound echoes softly, where the outside world and the interior space meet. It suggests a threshold, not fully public, not fully hidden. Many ancient cultures treated these in-between places as spiritually charged zones, where communication with something beyond the everyday felt more possible. The symbols themselves resist easy interpretation. There are zigzag lines, concentric circles, ladder-like forms, and shapes that resemble footprints or claws. Some figures appear geometric, others organic. A few seem almost intentionally incomplete, as if the act of carving mattered more than the finished image. There are no clear hunting scenes, no animals rendered in recognizable detail, no obvious storytelling panels like those found in other regions. That absence is part of the mystery. If these carvings were records, they weren't records of daily life. Archaeologists generally attribute the petroglyphs to ancestral Caddoan or closely related woodland period peoples, though pinning them to a single group is difficult. The Sandboy region was a crossroads. Different cultures passed through over thousands of years, leaving overlapping traces that blur clean timelines. What's striking is how the carvings don't show obvious stylistic evolution. Some symbols carved centuries apart look nearly identical. That kind of continuity suggests long-held traditions passed down carefully, not improvised by individuals. One of the most debated ideas is that the Robbers Cave petroglyphs functioned as ceremonial markers rather than messages. In this view, the carvings weren't meant to explain anything. They marked participation. You carved as part of a ritual, a rite of passage, or a seasonal gathering. The symbol didn't need interpretation, because the act itself carried meaning. This would explain why many carvings overlap or cluster tightly, sometimes layered without concern for clarity. The wall wasn't a canvas, it was a witness. Standing there today, you can almost feel that intent. The space doesn't invite lingering conversation. Sound behaves differently. Wind funnels through the rock, shifting abruptly. Even on a busy day, there are moments of sudden quiet where the forest seems to hold its breath. It's easy to imagine a small group standing close to the wall, focused, deliberate, aware that this place demanded attention. Another theory connects the carvings to travel and territorial boundaries. Robbers Cave sits near natural routes through the mountains, paths that would have been used long before formal trails existed. The symbols could have marked safe passage, seasonal access points, or agreements between groups. Yet if that were the case, you might expect clearer symbols, repeated consistently along routes. Instead, the carvings feel localized, personal to this specific place rather than directional. There's also the question of why the cave itself became central to later outlaw legends. While that part of the story is modern, it hints at something older. People have always sensed that this was a place apart. Jesse James and Belle Starr didn't choose it randomly. The cave offers concealment, yes, but it also offers perspective. From certain ledges, you can see miles of forested hills, a natural lookout that would have been valuable in any era. Ancient peoples likely recognized the same advantage, not just practically, but symbolically. Seeing without being seen carries power. What complicates the mystery further is how little disturbance the carvings show. Despite centuries of weather, despite human traffic, many symbols remain legible enough to recognize patterns. That durability suggests careful placement and technique. These weren't hurried marks. The carvers understood the stone, knew where it would hold, where it would erode, where shadow would protect it. That knowledge implies generations of familiarity with this exact location. There's no clear consensus on whether the petroglyphs represent cosmological ideas, clan symbols, or abstract spiritual concepts. Some researchers have noted similarities between certain shapes and motifs associated with sky observation, cycles, or balance. Others argue that reading them symbolically at all may be a mistake, that modern viewers are projecting meaning where the original intent was experiential rather than representational. That uncertainty is part of what makes Robbers Cave different from more famous rock art sites. It doesn't offer easy hooks. It doesn't resolve neatly into a story you can summarize in a paragraph. Instead, it leaves you with impressions, the sense that something important happened here, repeatedly, over long stretches of time, and that whatever that thing was, it didn't need to explain itself to the future. Today, Robbers Cave State Park is a place of hiking trails, climbing routes, and weekend campers. People laugh, children scramble over rocks, and the forest feels friendly, almost casual. But if you step off the main path and stand in front of the carved stone, that mood shifts. The carvings don't compete for attention, they wait. You notice how your voice lowers without realizing it, how you stand a little closer, a little quieter. There are also losses. Some carvings have been damaged or obscured over time, whether by erosion, graffiti, or well-meaning but careless visitors touching the stone. Preservation efforts exist, but like many sites, Robbers Cave sits in a fragile balance between access and protection. It's open enough to be known, but vulnerable enough to be altered permanently by a few bad decisions. What remains undeniable is that these petroglyphs weren't random. They weren't decorative. They weren't idle marks made to pass time. They represent intention, repetition, and place-based meaning. Whether ceremonial, territorial, spiritual, or something else entirely, they reflect a worldview where landscape mattered deeply, where stone wasn't inert, and where carving into rock was an act worth remembering. When you leave the site and walk back into the forest, the carvings don't follow you, they stay behind, anchored to that specific wall, that exact angle of light, and maybe that's the point. Whatever message they carried wasn't meant to travel. It belonged to Robbers Cave, to the stone, to the people who stood there long before anyone called it a hideout. Standing there today, it's hard not to feel like a visitor to something ongoing rather than finished. The mystery isn't just what the symbols mean, it's why this place still feels charged, still quietly demanding respect. Robbers Cave doesn't explain itself. It never has, and maybe that silence is the most honest clue we're ever going to get. The Spiro copper plates. The Spiro copper plates come from a place that once pulsed with power long before Oklahoma had a name. Near the Arkansas River, just east of where modern highways cut through farmland, the Spiro mounds rise quietly from the landscape. To a casual passerby, they look like little more than grassy hills. But buried within one of them, the Craig Mound, was a discovery so unexpected, so sophisticated, that it forced archaeologists to rethink what ancient North America was capable of. When the copper plates were first uncovered in the early 1930s, they weren't found neatly preserved or ceremonially displayed. They were ripped from the mound by looters, pulled apart, scattered, and sold piece by piece. That damage still clouds our understanding today. We don't know how many plates there were originally, or how they were arranged, or what kind of ceremony surrounded them. What we do know is this: whoever created them possessed advanced artistic skill, deep symbolic knowledge, and access to far-reaching trade networks that stretched hundreds of miles. The plates themselves are thin sheets of hammered copper, embossed with intricate designs. Human figures dominate many of them, but these aren't everyday people. They wear elaborate headdresses, hold ceremonial objects, and stand in rigid, almost floating poses. Some have wings, others appear mid-transformation, part human, part something else. Their faces are stylized, their eyes intense, their bodies marked with symbols that repeat across different plates. What immediately sets the Spiro copper plates apart is their level of detail. This isn't crude metalwork. The lines are clean, deliberate, and confident. Muscles are suggested with subtle curves. Feathers are layered carefully. The artists understood anatomy, balance, and negative space. More importantly, they understood symbolism. Every element feels intentional, as if removing even one line would break the meaning. Copper itself adds another layer to the mystery. There is no natural copper source near Spiro. The metal had to be brought in, most likely from the Great Lakes region, over vast distances through trade networks that existed centuries before European contact. That alone tells us Spiro wasn't isolated. It was plugged into a continent-wide system of exchange, ideas, and belief. Most researchers place the plates within the Mississippian cultural world, dating roughly between 900 and 1400 AD. This was a time of large ceremonial centers, mound building, and complex social hierarchies. But the plates don't just reflect wealth or power, they reflect cosmology. Many of the figures are believed to represent beings from the Mississippian spiritual universe, especially those associated with the upper world, a realm tied to the sky, birds, and order. One recurring figure is often described as a birdman, a winged warrior or deity linked to authority, ritual combat, and renewal. This figure appears across the Mississippian world, carved into shell, stone, and copper. But the Spiro versions feel especially refined, almost canonical, as if they weren't just interpretations but central references. That raises a difficult question. Was Spiro simply participating in a shared religious tradition, or was it one of its centers? Some scholars argue that Spiro was a spiritual hub, a place where sacred objects were created, used, and ultimately buried as part of complex funerary rites. The Craig Mound, where the plates were found, appears to have functioned as a charnel house, a place where the remains of elites were temporarily stored before final burial elsewhere. If that's true, the copper plates may not have been personal possessions at all. They may have been ritual tools, worn or displayed briefly, then deliberately removed from circulation. Their burial could have marked the end of a cycle, a transition, or even the death of a lineage or religious order. What complicates interpretation is how otherworldly some of the imagery feels. Certain figures don't fit neatly into known categories. Limbs bend at odd angles, faces combine human and animal traits. Symbols float around the figures without clear grounding. This has led some to suggest shamanic visions, trance imagery, or representations of beings encountered in altered states of consciousness. Standing in front of these images today, even in photographs or museum displays, there's a strange sense of motion. The figures don't feel static. They look like they're caught between worlds, frozen mid-step in a process we were never meant to see fully. That sensation is hard to explain, but it's consistent across multiple plates. There's also the unsettling fact that the plates show no evidence of practical use. They're too thin to be armor, too delicate to be everyday ornaments. Their edges are often sharp, unfinished, suggesting they weren't meant for comfort. This reinforces the idea that they were ceremonial, perhaps worn briefly during rites, or mounted temporarily before burial. The tragedy of the Spiro copper plates is that context was destroyed almost as soon as they were found. Looters used dynamite to access the mound, collapsing chambers and mixing artifacts that had been placed deliberately. By the time professional archaeologists arrived, the original story had already been scrambled. Even so, enough remains to tell us this wasn't an isolated artistic experiment. It was part of a coherent system of belief, one that tied identity, power, and the cosmos together. The plates weren't just art. They were statements about how the universe was structured and where humans fit within it. Today, the Spiro Mound site feels quiet, almost modest. There are paths, interpretive signs, and open sky. It's hard to reconcile that calm with the intensity of what once happened there. The plates themselves are scattered across museums, separated from each other, their original relationships lost. Seeing them apart feels wrong somehow, like reading a sentence where half the words are missing. What remains most mysterious is why this level of complexity seems to appear fully formed. There's no clear developmental trail leading up to the plates. They don't look experimental, they look confident, as if the artists already knew exactly what they were doing and why. When you step back and take it all in, the Spiro copper plates challenge a lot of assumptions about technology, about religion, about how interconnected ancient North America really was. They force us to acknowledge that sophisticated symbolic systems existed here, deeply rooted, long before outside influence. And yet, for all their detail, the plates don't explain themselves. They don't tell a story we can translate cleanly. They don't offer names, dates, or instructions. They offer presence. They offer evidence of a world where meaning was layered, guarded, and never meant to be obvious. That may be the most honest legacy they leave behind. Not answers, but a reminder that complexity doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it's buried, hammered into copper, sealed inside earth, and left waiting for someone to realize just how much they don't understand. The Black Mesa Stone Circles. Black Mesa doesn't feel like the rest of Oklahoma. rising quietly in the far western panhandle. It's a high, wind-scraped plateau where the land flattens out and the horizon stretches farther than feels reasonable. The air is thinner here, the light sharper, and the ground underfoot is dark with volcanic stone. It's the highest point in the state, but it never announces itself. You arrive without ceremony, standing on ground that feels ancient in a way that's hard to put into words. Scattered across parts of this mesa are stone circles that don't belong to any obvious story. They aren't large, some are only a few feet across. Others are wider, carefully laid out with stones placed in deliberate rings. At first glance, they're easy to dismiss as natural formations, or the remains of more recent activity. But once you notice how consistent they are, how intentionally arranged, that explanation starts to fall apart. These stone circles aren't random piles. The rocks are selected, not just scooped from the nearest patch of ground. In many cases, they contrast slightly with the surrounding stone, lighter or smoother, as if chosen for visibility. The spacing is deliberate. The rings are closed, rarely broken, and often sit on subtly elevated ground. Whoever built them wanted them to be seen, but not from far away. You have to be standing near them to understand they're there. Black Mesa has been occupied by humans for thousands of years. The region shows evidence of Paleo-Indian, Archaic, and later Plains cultures moving through or temporarily settling in the area. Water sources are scarce, but reliable springs exist, and game would have passed through seasonally. This wasn't a permanent population center, but it wasn't empty either. It was a place people returned to, again and again. That context matters when trying to understand the stone circles. They aren't associated with permanent dwellings. There are no clear remains of long-term structures nearby, no obvious hearths or storage pits directly connected to them. That alone suggests they weren't everyday living spaces. If they were used regularly, it wasn't for ordinary domestic life. One interpretation is that the circles were the bases of temporary structures, possibly tip-ups or windbreaks, weighted down with stones. This explanation works in some parts of the plains, where stone rings clearly mark historic encampments, but the Black Mesa circles complicate that theory. Many are located in exposed areas where shelter would have been impractical. Others lack the entry gaps typically seen in domestic stone rings, and some are far too carefully aligned to feel purely functional. Alignment is where the mystery deepens. Several of the circles appear to be oriented toward specific points on the horizon. From certain rings, distant landmarks line up in ways that don't feel accidental. In a few cases, the circles appear to correspond with sunrise or sunset positions during key seasonal moments. These alignments aren't precise enough to call them observatories, but they're consistent enough to suggest awareness. Black Mesa's elevation makes it a natural place for observation. From up here, weather patterns are visible long before they arrive. Storms roll in like distant walls. Stars appear sharper at night, unobstructed by trees or hills. For cultures attuned to seasonal cycles, this would have been a powerful place to mark time, track movement, and orient ritual life. Some archaeologists suggest the stone circles may have served ceremonial or communal functions, perhaps tied to seasonal gatherings. Groups moving across the plains may have used Black Mesa as a meeting point, a neutral ground where rituals were performed before people dispersed again. The circles could have marked sacred space temporarily activated during these gatherings and then left behind. There's also the possibility that the circles weren't meant to last forever. They may have been constructed knowing they would eventually erode, scatter, or be reclaimed by the land. That impermanence fits with cultures that valued cycles rather than permanence. The meaning was in the act of building, not in leaving a monument behind. What's striking is how little modification surrounds the circles. There's no decoration, no carving, no added symbolism beyond the form itself. A circle is a simple shape, but it carries weight. It suggests continuity, enclosure, balance. It separates inside from outside without creating hierarchy. Standing within one of these rings today, you feel that boundary instinctively, even if you can't explain why. Black Mesa itself adds another layer. The mesa is capped with basalt from ancient volcanic flows, making it geologically distinct from the surrounding plains. That dark stone absorbs heat, radiates warmth, and creates a subtle microclimate. To people living close to the land, these differences would have been noticeable. Places that behave differently tend to attract meaning. There's no single cultural group that can be definitively linked to the circles. They may represent multiple periods of use, built, reused, and reinterpreted over generations. One group's ceremonial site may have become another group's boundary marker, or simply a place recognized as important because others had marked it before. That continuity without clarity, frustrates modern interpretation. We want labels, we want dates and names, but the Black Mesa stone circles resist that. They sit in open space exposed to wind and time, refusing to tell a clear story. Even archaeologists approach them cautiously, aware that imposing a single explanation risks flattening something that was likely layered and evolving. Visiting the site today feels different from visiting a managed park or a marked archaeological attraction. There are no crowds, no fences, often no signs at all. The land feels indifferent to your presence. You can walk right past a circle without noticing it, then double back and suddenly see it clearly, as if it had decided to reveal itself. That experience mirrors the mystery itself. These circles don't demand attention, they wait for it, and once noticed, they change how you see the ground around them. You start scanning for patterns, noticing subtle rises, shifts in stone color, faint traces of arrangement. The landscape becomes less empty, more intentional. There are threats though. Erosion, cattle movement, and unintentional damage slowly degrade the circles. Because they aren't dramatic or widely known, they're vulnerable to being dismissed or overlooked. Each displaced stone erases a little more context, a little more of whatever message was embedded in their form. What remains compelling is how these circles fit into a broader pattern seen across the plains and beyond. Humans everywhere have used circles to mark meaning. From medicine wheels to dance grounds to ceremonial enclosures, the form repeats across cultures that never met. That repetition suggests something fundamental, something intuitive about how humans organize sacred space. The Black Mesa stone circles don't tell us exactly who built them or why, but they tell us that this high, quiet place mattered, that people came here not just to pass through, but to stop, arrange stone and mark space with intention. That alone sets them apart from coincidence. Standing there as the wind moves across the plateau, it's easy to imagine the circles once filled with people, sound, movement, then emptied again, left intact, waiting for the next cycle. That rhythm feels more plausible than a single explanation frozen in time. In the end, the mystery of the Black Mesa stone circles isn't about decoding a specific function, it's about recognizing restraint. These aren't monuments meant to dominate the land, they're gestures, subtle and deliberate, integrated into the landscape rather than imposed on it. Black Mesa doesn't explain itself, and neither do the circles. They exist quietly at the edge of the state, at the edge of interpretation, reminding us that not all ancient knowledge was meant to survive intact. Some of it was meant to be experienced, then released, leaving behind just enough to make us pause and wonder why anyone ever thought this place was empty. The Wichita Mountains stone enclosures. The Wichita Mountains rise abruptly from the plains of southwestern Oklahoma, old granite shoulders pushing through grassland that feels almost too flat to prepare you for them. These mountains are among the oldest exposed rock formations in North America, worn down and reshaped over hundreds of millions of years. They don't look dramatic at first glance, but the longer you're there, the heavier they feel. The stone has presence. It feels settled, watchful, like it has seen too much to be impressed by anyone passing through. Tucked into this rugged landscape are stone enclosures that don't fit neatly into any known historical category. They aren't forts in the military sense. They aren't villages. They aren't obvious dwellings. Instead, they appear as low walls, circular or semicircular arrangements of stacked stone, sometimes barely waist high, sometimes collapsed into rough outlines that only reveal themselves when you slow down and really look. Many visitors walk right past them without noticing. They blend into the terrain too well. The granite used to build them matches the surrounding rock almost perfectly, making the enclosures feel less like constructions and more like extensions of the land itself. That blending feels intentional. Whoever built these structures wasn't trying to dominate the landscape. They were working with it. The first question everyone asks is simple: what were they for? And that's where certainty ends. There's no consensus. Some enclosures sit on elevated ground with wide views of the surrounding plains. Others are tucked into shallow valleys or near rock outcrops that block wind and sound. A few appear near seasonal water sources, while others stand in places that feel inconvenient for everyday use. That inconsistency suggests they didn't serve a single practical function. Early interpretations lean toward defensive use. Low stone walls in elevated positions naturally invite that conclusion, but the more closely you look, the less convincing that idea becomes. The walls are too low to provide meaningful protection. They lack clear entry points or strategic reinforcement. In many cases, there are easier, more defensible locations nearby that were left untouched. If defense was the goal, these enclosures don't show it. Another theory suggests they were corrals or hunting structures used to guide animals into confined spaces. This works better in open plains, where large-scale drives make sense, but in the broken terrain of the Wichita Mountains, animal movement is unpredictable. The enclosures aren't positioned in natural funnels or migration paths. They feel placed for people, not prey. What stands out instead is how deliberately these enclosures mark space. The act of stacking stone, even low walls, is a commitment. It takes time, it takes planning, it takes agreement among a group that this exact spot matters. You don't do that casually, especially when stone is heavy and the environment offers easier ways to improvise shelter. Some archaeologists believe the enclosures may have served ceremonial or social functions, temporary gathering places, locations where groups came together for seasonal rituals, decision-making, or rites of passage. The circular forms support this idea. Circles create equality. There's no front, no back, no obvious hierarchy. Everyone inside shares the space. The Wichita Mountains were known historically as a sacred landscape to several native groups, including ancestors of the Wichita, Comanche, and Kiowa peoples. Even after forced removal and upheaval, oral traditions continued to emphasize the spiritual importance of these mountains. Sacred places tend to accumulate layers of meaning over time. One group's ritual site becomes another group's place of respect, even if the original purpose fades. That layering may explain why the enclosures don't all look the same or sit in similar locations. They may not belong to a single moment in history. Some could be thousands of years old. Others may be much more recent, built in response to earlier structures already present. The mountains don't reset themselves between cultures, they accumulate memory. One of the most intriguing aspects is the silence of the sites. Unlike villages or long-term camps, there's very little debris associated with the enclosures. Few tools, little evidence of fire use, no clear signs of daily life. That absence suggests restraint. These weren't places where people lingered for weeks or months. They were used, then left intentionally clean. Standing inside one of these stone circles today, the experience is subtle but unmistakable. Sound changes slightly, wind behaves differently, your attention narrows. It's not dramatic, but it's enough to make you aware that you're inside something, not just standing on open ground. That psychological shift alone hints at purpose. The mountains amplify that effect. Granite reflects heat, stores it, releases it slowly. Temperature shifts are noticeable. Shadows move differently across the uneven stone. At sunrise and sunset, light spills across the landscape in a way that feels almost deliberate, as if the land itself is participating. For cultures attentive to natural cycles, this would have mattered. Some researchers have proposed astronomical connections, noting that certain enclosures align loosely with sunrise or sunset during seasonal transitions. These alignments aren't precise enough to prove intentional observation in a modern scientific sense. But precision may not have been the goal. Marking change, rather than measuring it exactly, could have been enough. Another possibility is that the enclosures served as boundary markers, not between territories in a political sense, but between states of being, places where one prepared for something. Vision quests, fasting, instruction. The mountains are an ideal setting for that kind of activity. Isolated but not inaccessible, demanding but survivable. What complicates everything is how little direct evidence survives. Stone lasts, everything else disappears. Without organic material, dating becomes difficult. Without written records, interpretation relies on pattern, comparison, and restraint. That restraint is important. It's easy to turn mystery into fantasy. The Wichita Mountains don't need that. The enclosures are compelling enough without exaggeration. There are modern threats to these sites: erosion, foot traffic, well-meaning visitors climbing or rearranging stones without realizing they're altering something ancient. Because the enclosures aren't fenced or heavily marked, they rely on awareness and respect for their survival. Once stones are moved, original layouts are lost forever. What remains powerful is how naturally these structures fit into the landscape. They don't interrupt the view, they don't announce themselves, they reward attention rather than demand it. That alone says something about the people who built them. This wasn't about permanence or legacy, it was about presence. In a world where so much ancient architecture aims upward or outward, the Wichita Mountains stone enclosures feel inward. They draw you into the land rather than lifting you above it. They ask you to stand still, to notice where you are, to feel the ground under your feet. Today, the Wichita Mountains Wildlife Refuge surrounds many of these areas. Bison roam nearby. Wind moves through grass the same way it did centuries ago. The land still feels alive, still active. That continuity makes it easier to imagine these enclosures not as ruins, but as paused moments, spaces waiting to be activated again, not by rebuilding, but by attention. The mystery isn't just who built them or when. It's why this place keeps drawing people back, why these low walls still hold space in a landscape that has erased so much else. The answer may be simpler than we expect. The Wichita Mountains mattered, enough that people carried stone, stacked it carefully, and walked away knowing the land would remember. And standing there now, surrounded by ancient granite and open sky, it feels like the land still does.